Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world today. Today is a great day. We have some great speakers and great content that we're going to cover. My name is Epi Ludwig, and I'm the founder and CEO of Crowdsourcing Week and Bold Awards. Brief history for some of you who are new to our platform. Crowdsourcing Week has been around more than 10 years now, besides doing physical conferences in over 30 countries and 4 continents. Up until late 2019, our focus has shifted and focuses mostly with digital marketing services for crowdsourced platforms and solutions, staying true to our core mission by powering breakthroughs together. On the other hand, also we have a Bold Awards brand, which is our annual innovation program that we launched together with H Farm back in 2019. We just wrapped up our awards ceremony about a month and a half ago in Venice, and with over 33 categories, this program is better known as the Oscars for Digital Industries. One great global recognition platform that is non-commercial. You can find out more on our website at bold-awards.com and get ready to submit your project or company for our 6th edition of Bold Awards, now in Lisbon, Portugal for the first time. So this is very, very exciting. First, I'd like to thank our speakers and all of you for joining this Crowd Sessions virtual event. Topic will be about crowdsourcing and price challenges shaping the future of innovation. A little housekeeping before we get started. Any questions you have, please put them on the chat section below. Clive Rafael from our team will be moderating all the questions, and we'll bring them to each speaker after their presentation. Feel free to share your social profile, your LinkedIn profile, and connect with each other. We would like to give some ample time for you two guys to connect, build relationships, and this is what we want to do here. All right, so are we ready? Yes? Yeah, let's go. All right, so every year at Crowdsourcing Week, we do have a theme of the year. And this is the theme of the emerging age of HI and AI, unleashing collective intelligence. Obviously, there's a lot of AI going on, but without the human intelligence, the AI is not intelligent enough. So we got to truly understand the power of a human intelligence and how crowdsourcing plays a major role here, having the right AI. Obviously, I'm talking about more ethical AI than anything else. So as I mentioned, our Bold 6 is here. It's 33 categories. There's a new category that we launched this time. It's about quantum computing. So we look at the companies who are leading in this space. Very exciting. So join us. Again, this is going to be in Portugal, our award ceremony, and we're truly looking forward. This is going to be a truly amazing experience. Again, we have some great speakers. We have Cal Sahota here, and also Emanuele Musa, who's joining us for this crowd sessions, sharing their insights, working with their partners and so on. So truly looking forward to their presentation. It's very important that to know that humans are the only species on the planet that can think abstractly, communicate complex thoughts, and culturally accumulate information over the generation. There is no AI that can replace this, and it will never be replaced in the human as we know it. Obviously, there are some forces that are trying to change the human, but humans are a spirit being, and because of that, the innovations lie in the spirit. And so we're truly excited because we're bringing something to the world that the world can see through as a human purpose innovation and not technology purpose innovation. All right, so it's also very important to know, as we see the number of platforms. Obviously, we do have Manuel, and we have a Cal coming from platforms, how they're designing these challenges, what are the key focus in terms of having the participation. It's very important that in the end, it's all about the people. So innovations are solving people's problems, not technology problems. Obviously, this is an opportunity that we have with these platforms, and I'm really, it's a privilege to have both of them to share their insights. The future now. We've done this a long time, and here we are. There's no longer about the download mindset. It's all about upload mindset. It's about an immersion. Obviously, we do have now a gadget, which is a Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro, that made the mark in the marketplace, where now we are seeing a true immersion happening in enterprise and going forward with the rest of the market in terms of the consumer market. But what's really important here to know is that we have also some really incredibly amazing technologies inside these type of technologies that is truly amazing, and how we're going to create environments, how we're going to create a new opportunities for humanity. So I'm really excited about what's ahead, but obviously there's also a lot of challenges ahead. But before we look at the challenges ahead, I want to also just understand better, like, we look at we're drowning right now with information. We're in an information overload, literally, and this is one diagram that IBM brought this about a few years back in terms of how knowledge has been doubling, and you look at over the back in the days, 400 years ago, the knowledge took about 400 years just to double the knowledge, and now we have this. Doubling of knowledge so fast and such a pace that it's very hard to comprehend how fast. But also, it's very important to know, like, what type of knowledge we are doubling, because we're living in a world where there's lots of wrong data versus the right data. So it's a really exciting times and challenging times. Centralization versus is where we are at the moment. It's important to know for all of us here in innovation that there are an opportunity here where we are going to see the new companies that are going to make a mark for this decade and the rest of the decades to come. And you look at the number of companies that they have a control in the current environment. It clearly shows that a lot of the problems that we've been dealing with, they're coming from a top-down approach, basically presenting the problem. So what decentralization will make us is we'll be able to use the power of crowdsourcing to identify the problem first and go to the root cause of the problem, what that's created, how that came about, and then use that as an opportunity to use and find solutions. So really exciting times, and this truly the accelerated innovation happens because of decentralization. I truly believe that. So it's truly a powerful way to think and to have that mindset, knowing that we are in times where there's a lot of challenges, where there's lots of geopolitical shifts are happening, but also at the same time, this is the best time where the new opportunities and new companies are coming alive, and that's going to change a lot of our behaviors and a lot of the things that we do. Also, it's very important to know, like I shared this for the past year and a half, 2 years, what are these three harbingers of revolution that each one of us have to know, and where we in right now. We are at the crossroad right now where all this technological innovation renaissance is happening, but understanding these harbingers of revolution between 250-year revolution cycle, and then understanding also the 84-year populist movement cycle, and then also the financial crisis cycle is very important. So we're all at the same time, it's happening. And so with that, also that creates lots of opportunities. So truly believe that for a lot of people, these times are probably a very depressive time, but also for a lot of people, I believe that this is truly an exciting times, a time where we're going to see collaboration 10x, and so I think this is a huge opportunity. So without that, I'd like to bring our great presenter Cal Sahota on our next as a part of our presentation. Cal, she's been for 25 years in the corporate world, primarily in the financial services. and she's been now a CEO and a president of HeroX, which is a innovation platform, which she'll be sharing this with us later. With her passion for innovation, coupled with her background in corporate roles, she's well positioned to understand the environment of current business and powerfully support brands and organization in identifying strategies related to open innovation. So truly one great platform for innovators and for companies who are looking for an outside of their customers and outside of their companies to innovate. So her presentation would be about the crowd and human intelligence, which is HI, augmented by AI, but not replaced by AI. So Cal, welcome, and looking forward to your presentation. Are you able to share your screen?
Hi there, how are you?
Doing great. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I think you have to
Welcome.
stop your screen share perhaps before I can start mine.
Absolutely. So I'm
There we
just
go.
stopped sharing the screen, and now you can go ahead and share your screen. And
Perfect.
here
Are you
we
able to see
are.
it okay?
Fantastic. Welcome.
Welcome. How are you?
Fantastic. Very good.
Staying out of trouble? Well,
Always.
always. Well, that makes for a little bit of a boring life, but that's okay too. So that's really great to be here, Epi. It's always a pleasure to participate in Crowdsourcing Week events. So
Thank you.
all right, so let's jump into our presentation for today. So as Epi mentioned in today's chat, I'm going to touch on the distinctions of both human intelligence versus artificial intelligence and leveraging each for their respective strengths, particularly in crowdsourcing. So when you think of how you can push your business forward through crowd innovation, one of the most critical aspects of this approach is being able to easily access and tap into crowd. So let's get a little bit of clarity on what we define as crowd. So in broader terms, it's the over potentially 5 billion connected to the World Wide Web. At HeroX, we truly lean into the actual essence of crowdsourcing, in that genius and human ingenuity can literally live anywhere. Now, we didn't want to limit our community to a certain niche. We believe that the broader your crowd is, the higher the chances of a much more disruptive idea. It removes the curse of knowledge, if you will. So at present, we're represented in 175 countries and over 227,000 in active innovators. Now, it's important to note that our platform only tracks active and engaged innovators. So each of these innovators would have actually participated in one of our challenges. Another key point really speaks to our methodology of growing crowd. On average, 82% of our innovators are new to our challenges. So this isn't about repurposing our existing community on HeroX. It's about building the crowd that your problem needs. There's no getting away from the excitement and the capabilities of artificial intelligence. So let's talk a little bit about AI versus HI, so human intelligence. Artificial intelligence clearly excels in computational, power, speed, accuracy, whereas with human intelligence, it's driven by emotions, intuition, creativity, perception, etc. Artificial intelligence obviously relies on predefined algorithms, whereas with humans, we rely on innate abilities and learning from human experiences. Now, you're going to hear me reference this in some shape or form throughout my presentation today. As excited as we are about the impact and the trajectory that AI has on business and on day-to-day life, actually, it's not going to completely replace human intelligence. This is the essence of crowdsourcing. I personally deeply believe in the power of crowd, in finding disruptive thinking in the most unlikely of places. It's for this reason that I know crowdsourcing has been around for decades, and it's going to continue to create value. So let's talk a little bit about the value of human intelligence and that, AI cannot bring. So despite its impressive capabilities, it lacks that inherent creativity and that empathy that are crucial aspects of human intelligence. So you can't replicate that depth of emotion, which is really required to have that really think out of the box ability that humans have. AI's performance heavily relies on quality and quantity of data it receives. So in situations where there's insufficient or perhaps biased data, AI may provide inaccurate results or potentially reinforce existing prejudices. I'm sure in your own use of ChatGPT or similar tools, I'm sure you've all experienced that to some extent. I know I have. So as AI becomes increasingly prevalent in decision-making processes, what about the ethical side of things, right? There's questions about accountability, transparency, biases in AI algorithms. These are all considerations which need to thoroughly be addressed. So building on the previous slide, the focus on the human side. What was hugely eye-opening for myself when I first came into this space, I can't believe it's going to be almost 9 years, but yeah, when I came into this space about 9 years ago, the main driver for innovators to compete isn't the almighty dollar. That was hugely eye-opening for me. Money was actually number 3, very closely tied to having fun. The data on this slide actually was compiled based on research conducted in partnership with the Harvard Laboratory for Innovation Science. Now, why is this important? When you grow your crowd, understanding what drives them is key. In fact, it should be top of mind for you at all times. How you drive traffic is through content creation. So customizing your messaging to really reach your audience ensures the highest level of engagement and success for your project. So when does it make sense to tap into the crowd? You see a few bullet points here, certainly not an exhaustive list. First one's obvious. The best solution isn't the obvious one. So you want to, have something that's unique for a solution. Secondly, the desired outcome is clear and measurable. And this is really important. When you invite innovators to come to compete in one of your projects, you want to make sure that they clearly understand the solution that you're looking for. And you do that by making sure that you're articulating it clearly and attaching it to a really clear and measurable result. So you're going to get exactly what you're looking for. People think that the problem is solvable. If they think it's impossible, no one's going to want to come to compete. And that the problem isn't already being addressed in the market. Interestingly, when you look at some of the things that make for a not so great project, it's oftentimes the results of a competition that really aren't compelling. One of the biggest ones that I see that shows up is if the sole reason for running a project is financial gain. So for example, if a salesperson is designing a project to get more leads to generate more revenue, we find that our community is less likely to show interest in simply coming to show up to help you make more money. So when I think about disruptive ideas, I see that disruption is powered by unique human experiences that really can't be replicated. And Epi, you touched on this in your intro. Well, at least not yet, and hopefully not ever. So the way I like to think about it is that maybe something happened to me as a child. Then when I got a few years older, I overheard something. And then I participated in an unrelated project. And then at some point, a problem presented itself. For me to be able to draw on my memory and connect all of the dots of these experiences is where disruption is the most powerful, because it's owned by one's unique experience in life. So taking a step back to share a bit about HeroX and overall overview of crowdsourcing, HeroX is an all-purpose crowdsourcing platform. And for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with crowdsourcing, it's a form of open innovation. The concept is very simple, but extremely powerful. It's actually been around for decades, but the use in everyday business is still very much gaining momentum. But I'd say, definitely over the last 3 to 4 years, it's absolutely picked up momentum. So if organizations are blocked with solving a business issue or quite simply looking for a new idea, they come onto our platform and they host a challenge. They clearly articulate what they're looking for, and they invite anyone to present them with an idea or a solution. The platform itself is turnkey. It gives you everything that you need to launch your challenge, to monitor it, the judging process, it's all built right into the platform. The overarching logic being, instead of limiting yourself to your in-house team or direct contacts, you take it to the crowd. The crowd, as I mentioned earlier, being defined as the potentially over 5 billion connected to the World Wide Web. So if you think about it like this, if you're an expert in your field for 20 years, could you have what they say, the curse of knowledge, which is oftentimes what could be getting in the way of you finding an innovative solution. So someone can potentially come along and look at the same problem, maybe from a slightly different perspective, and see something that you may have missed. That's where disruption lives. By removing the expectation of credentials, you've drastically deepened your pool of potential problem solvers and solutions. This is why having a broad, uncredentialized crowd is so important. So coexisting and leveraging both AI and HI is where we see the biggest opportunity to create impact. So AI is simply a tool to harness human intelligence. We've integrated AI into the HeroX platform to create ease and efficiency in crafting the content to launching your crowdsourcing project. So helping you really create your problem statement as clearly as possible. At this stage, our HeroX team utilizes it to augment our services. We're going to continue to test it internally, with phase 2 allowing for direct access to clients, particularly those who use our platform more as a self-serve model. So stay tuned for that. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of crowdsourced projects. Here's a prime example of a project leveraging AI within crowdsourcing. This one is actually hosted by the FAA. So the challenge is to leverage AI and advanced analytics to tackle challenges within aviation safety, operational efficiency, sustainable aviation, and there's a couple of other points as well. So, this challenge, so this particular challenge is structured with 2 main phases. So phase 1 is focusing on the actual problem identification, where solvers actually identify aviation-related problems, and then they're planned to tackle them using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there are going to be up to 10 finalists selected to move on to phase 2, where they're going to be then asked to develop and execute their proposed solutions. Again, leveraging both AI and HI. By the way, this challenge is actually still open. So if any of our listeners is actually interested in participating, there's still time to register to compete. Now, here's an example of Airbus leveraging the crowd to imagine how you can use the metaverse to improve their passengers' experience. This particular challenge was successfully launched and actually closed, I think, about a couple of years back for a total prize purse of about $30,000. It was split amongst a few winners. So 5 in total. There was 1 first prize winner awarded $10,000 and 4 second prize winners awarded $5,000 each. So Airbus was really pleased with the results and the quality of the ideas that they received. They're now working through them in-house. One of the biggest value adds of crowdsourcing is the democratization of tapping into human ingenuity from all over the globe. We know that disruption occurs when you're further away from your area of expertise. So having a global crowd really creates that larger opportunity to make that happen. So this map is specific to the Airbus challenge, so you can see the geographic reach and the diversity of this particular challenge. One of our key distinctions at HeroX is that we're positioned as a social network for innovation. So at HeroX, we support our clients in powerfully building their own crowd. So we're the only place that you can build, grow, communicate with your very own crowdsourcing crowd, your brand of enthusiasts, if you will. So a crowd that you can tap into again and again and again. HeroX offers you your very own custom brand page. Here's an example of Airbus's brand page, which serves as their homepage on HeroX. This is where their crowd lives. This is where all of their projects live. The more you crowdsource, naturally, the larger your community is going to get. And lastly, and very importantly, we have nothing about what backend you use. If you opt to use one of the other platforms available, We have a very strong partner strategy. You can still have a challenge card on our homepage, but it's simply when you click on it, it'll click back through to whatever backend that you've used. Our focus is crowd. Here's a simple 3-step methodology that we follow. Step 1, start with the crowd that you already have. So your existing crowd. This may be on social, or quite simply, you could have a list of even emails. Every challenge page has its own custom URL and a share or follow option available. It's simple and it's easy to invite your existing crowd to join your brand page, or you can invite them to any active challenge. Number 2, HeroX already has an active crowd of innovators. We actually refer to them as heroes. So as you saw from the previous slide, over 220,000 strong. Notable is that they aren't behind a paywall. So they're available to you as a part of your access to the platform. They can self-select to participate in any one of your projects. Number 3, lastly, you have access to our HeroX crowd build services. You can self-select to add on the service to further augment your efforts to drive intentional traffic to your challenge page. This is an area that, I'm really pleased to say that we truly excel. We also have a full knowledge base, which is rich with templates and tactics to support you in building your crowd on your own. So you certainly don't have to add on a service. We'll give you all the tools that you need if you want to go ahead and if you want to choose to do that yourself. Here's just some examples of the clients that we've worked with. You'll see that there's a range in the size of organizations in varying industries, even government. In fact, I think NASA is probably one of our busiest clients. So if you go onto our site, you're going to see many more examples and brands and types of challenges. Some of which you're going to find a really interesting one was the Lunar Loot Challenge. So it was a challenge finding ways for astronauts to go to the bathroom on the moon. That was an actual challenge that NASA ran with us. Another one that comes to mind is developing artificial intelligence for high-speed racing drones. That's a project that we actually ran for Lockheed Martin. Improving travel experiences through the use of metaverse. We just talked about that one with the Airbus challenge. We have the expertise to support regardless of your complexity of problem, prize amount. We're completely industry agnostic. So long as your project is socially responsible, ethical, and legal, we're pleased to lean in and help. So, we invite you to look to see what's in front of you. Look to see at your, the strategies or the tactics that you have in front of you, and look to see where there's an opportunity to leverage crowdsourcing. It doesn't have to be the complete solution. It can be part of your solution. And just like the Airbus example, you take the ideas and then from there, you bring them in-house and you continue to distill and iterate on them. But the first place to start is supporting you and your team in learning more. So that concludes my presentation for today. I really appreciate our audience's time to listen today. So if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to email me directly at cal@herox.com. You see my email address on the slide there.
It's great.
Back over to you, Epi.
Fantastic. Cal, thank you. This is great. Now, walk us through a little bit in terms of what's the typical timing here? Let's say when you onboard a challenge. What's the time frame we're looking at? How long do they go? And what's to the point that there's some solutions that the companies are now taking it within the company from?
Yeah, so it really depends on the complexity of the challenge. So, if your problem is, you're just looking for a new idea, typically from the time that you bring that to us to the time that we actually make it live on our platform, it can take about, 8 to 9 weeks, maybe a little bit more. And then again, it depends on how long you launch your challenge and allow innovators to actually compete. So typically that's about 3 months. So from the time you come to us to the time that you actually have something that you can take in-house and distill, it can be from 4 to 6 months. It really just depends.
Great. Clive, do we have any questions for Cal from the audience here? Cal, you around? Clive, you around? Okay, yeah.
Hi, hello, Cal.
Hi, how
Great to
are
hear.
you?
Great to hear you. Very well, thank you. Very well. One of the points you raised was ethical considerations. I'm wondering, do you ever find yourself in situations where you've got to remind some of the uh, people using Hero X of ethical considerations that they should keep in mind? I mean, I know people see it as a cost-effective way of developing innovations, but are people perhaps pushing that too far and exploiting your teams of innovators?
Yeah, so, it's one of the things I touched on just at the close of the presentation is, having one of our considerations is our projects have to be socially responsible. So if the projects themselves aren't socially responsible, it's not something that we support. But at the same time, we also do not want to be going through our platform and restricting. So there's a fine balance because we're a platform, we're a place where we connect innovators and brands to be able to get the solutions that they're looking for. So we have to be careful to not start going through and restricting content. But at the same time, if something is clearly socially irresponsible, that's not something that we want to have on the platform.
Okay, and also you were talking about how money is not the key factor for a lot of people to get involved with
Yeah.
different challenges. So what are some of the other motivations that come higher again?
Yeah, so I mean, just the excitement of like learning something new, learning a new skill, having fun. I mean, the things that you actually wouldn't imagine are more important to them than actually making money, which, as I mentioned to you, is one of the biggest things that I actually found to be the most interesting when I actually, started in this space 9 years ago. But, people want to compete for many reasons, but money is actually number three. So having fun, learning something new, these kinds of things are some of the two that come to mind.
So the
Yeah, it's good to hear.
motivation is the challenge itself. It's kind of like the events, right? Like physical events. The motivation is to connect with people, right? But then you got to have a hook, and the hook is the content itself, right?
Yeah, so
Um,
helping society solve important problems, that's a big one for them. As I already mentioned, learning new skills, having fun, money, those are the big ones. And the other one is reputation. So I think that's, building your own resume, which also attaches to your reputation as well, your abilities to be able to solve something. So that's another driver as well.
Clive, we have, I'm not sure, I don't see any messages here for questions. And you said that there's some issue with that. I see a gentleman, Terry Blake, wants to ask a question. Let's put them online and ask the question. So, Terry, I'm going to allow you to come in, and if you want to give us a question, you have a raised hand. Terry, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. How are you?
I'm just fine. I'm T-Bone, Terry Blake Nunley, the owner and CEO of T-Bone's Contracting and Construction LLC, located in Ohatchee, Alabama.
Okay.
Hi,
I'm
Terry.
yeah, nice to meet y'all. Um, my Hero X catchphrase is think like air. I have 18 and a half years experience in aerospace. As a Federal Aviation Administration certified repairman, a VPP Safety Council member through my former employer, as well as my role as a workflow specialist, changing the culture of Honeywell Aerospace as we went live on HOS, SAP, go live. I'm a superpower user. And help with the MPL process through them before my retirement about 7 years ago. So now I've started my own construction company to help rebuild America after national disasters. And so
So
I've
what's
been
your
really
question,
keeping up with
Terry? Terry, what's your question? Do you have a question for
what's my
us?
question.
Yeah.
My question is I'm just I'm just starting. I'm a startup company, and
Okay.
I'm trying to convert from and take my leadership skills from aerospace and put them on the ground in the construction business with my level of quality, my level of honesty and integrity, and my level of safety.
So
And
Terry,
to
have you tried to get to a HeroX platform to be part of those challenges in the aerospace business?
I'm retired from aerospace.
Okay.
And so now I'm in the construction industry, contracting and constructing industry, and want to take all the skills that I learned in aerospace as a high level leadership member to the construction industry. And I'm trying to pick a project that will be resourceful in both areas, such as search and rescue missions. I'm on the HeroX platform.
Okay, so Terry, you don't have a question. You just need some assistance on your startup, right? So this is I want to people give some time people to have a question. So I'm going to ask John Barker. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question to the panel, just about the nature of kind of prize giving for these innovative solutions that kind of individuals, organizations are providing. Is there any tension for you around individuals handing over potentially very valuable intellectual property for some of the time quite small amounts of money, other times it's larger amounts of money? How do you kind of work through that tension with your clients, but also, I guess, with the individuals interacting with HeroX?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we have agreements in place. So there's different models that you can set up, and all of that is built right into the design. So there can be a model where, the innovator retains the IP, or they give it to the sponsor, or it's shared. All of that's worked in, and the prize amounts are typically adjusted based on, the approach that you take and the model that you choose. So for example, if you're going to give your IP to the brand, then obviously the prize amounts are going to reflect that, and they're going to be much higher. And if you're going to keep it, it's going to be much lower. So it's all worked in. And there's also agreements that are signed off both by the innovators, and all of that, as I mentioned, is articulated very clearly in the challenge problem and the way the challenge is designed and presented. So there's no confusion, it's all clear.
Great. Carl, thank you. Appreciate your time. Great seeing you. Great also seeing the progress of the HeroX platform and solving some problems for some great companies, not just American companies, but across the world. So thank you for joining us. And now we move to next to Emanuele Musa, a longtime friend of Crowdsourcing Week. Emanuele, great seeing you. How are you?
Yeah, always well. Like as long as you see me alive, I'm never gonna complain.
Well, welcome. So I'm just going to give you a quick brief about your background. Manuel is an author, speaker, a trainer, and a strategic advisor, and an expert in the field of open and social innovation. He's the co-founder of Babel, one of the largest online acceleration networks for social business modeling and mentorship, which hosts a number of innovation programs for UN and Google, Bayer, Plug and Play, and Berkeley and Stanford University. Emmanuel's presentation today will be about open innovation for global sustainable development. And Emmanuel will be sharing the screen, or I'll be sharing the screen, whatever you like. Emmanuel, let me know.
I can share the screen, that's fine. Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me well? No?
I can hear you well, and
okay, fantastic. Yeah, so I want to be very brief, like regarding the introduction of Babel, like then we can actually get into that later. I briefly, like the work we do is that we develop digital innovation ecosystems, and these are closed ecosystems. So when we work with the United Nations or Google or Stanford, we create an ecosystem for the stakeholders that are already gravitating around those organizations, and then we provide a platform that simply allows this process to go end to end from like the ideation to the implementation. And like today, I wanted to talk about like the three pillars that are supporting this talk is the convergence of the startup way and like as a strategy approach, the reinventing organization that is taking place, and also the collective impact approach that can actually allow us to achieve a more relevant innovation for the coming years. I have two little daughters, and like I dedicate this kind of like short presentation to them. And so like I want to start from the fact that, like we all know that there are companies that are failing all the time. Also those companies that seem to be too big to fail, they keep failing. And what we keep seeing, it's a lot of companies that are trying to learn how to stop achieving failure. Whether we're achieving failure, it's simply building something that nobody wants. And many times they do it on time, on budget, with high quality and with beautiful design. And so, like achieving failure is pretty much successfully executing a bad plan. And this is things that are happening all the time. People like keep remembering the new Coke example, but like there are countless examples. There is one that, for example, that happened lately with the A380 from Airbus. They built the biggest airplane in the world, and then to discover that they managed to sell only 5 of those planes. And so that's interesting because it was a project that took a crazy amount of money, and the product was impeccable. But it was amazing to discover that, like such a huge organization didn't manage to get the feedback in time regarding the lack of market. Of course, organizations are appreciating more and more the approaches to actually get innovation right. Everybody right now understand like the whole interconnection between like mixing growth hacking with design thinking and lean and agile. And so that's why we actually see many organizations that are managing to transition from the traditional way of doing innovation to the more lean way of testing assumptions and making sure that they validate hypotheses before they actually build fully fledged products. And there are many examples, like there are companies such as IBM that they've started focusing on the loop, which is like a very interesting methodology based on the Eric Ries approach. Or, for example, there are companies like GE that went as far to train 40,000 employees on the lean startup methodology, because they said, if it is only the usual suspects that understand how innovation works, how can we get an accountant, how can we get someone like in another department to be able to contribute to the idea that we have a culture that is focused on innovation? So there is, like a lot going on. And of course, it's not easy. And there are many examples of companies that are struggling all the time. So from the work we are doing, I managed to wrap up like what I think are the 8 most effective way to actually fuck up innovation programs. And of course, like it starts with VAPID goals, where I define VAPID as vague, amorphous, pie in the sky, irrelevance, and delayed goals. And it continues with like hoping that people can innovate when they don't have time. They do it on the weekend, or they hope like they don't make a family. And this happens like we constantly talk with organizations that are hoping to squeeze until the last second of their employees' time, hoping to get actually innovation on top of everything else that they're already working on. A lot of untested ideas, and people that many times that they do not get any incentives for the work that they are doing on innovation. People left alone. There are many entrepreneurship programs that get people to actually get to the point in which they finish the accelerator, and then there is nothing actually going forward to bring the right support that these entrepreneurs need to go from whatever job description full-time in the company. Then the problem of excluding like the company executives, that's still an issue that it happens many times. And putting immediate pressure on results, that's also a huge one. Like sometimes many programs, they start like as a PR stunt, hoping to get results like the day after, while it takes a whole time to actually change the culture so that innovation really becomes radicated in the company and in the way that people think and they act. And then you may start actually seeing those results. And the last one, it's linked to punishing hard in case of failure. It's interesting because innovation, it's a numbers game, and failure, it's part of the process of innovation. And so that's interesting because like those companies that actually go for the fully fledged product, the Airbus A380, for example, then they discover they punish hard because there was a huge loss in the process. And so like when we look, strategy is important in innovation, but as it says, like organization culture, it's strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So culture, it's as important as strategy and more important in order to actually get innovation. So that's interesting because when you look at today's companies, we still get a lot of, many people, they still complaining that there is something that is broken in the way that management still work. In many companies, there are still many people that can't really say what they think, or many times they're simply treated like kids in the way that the decisions are taken on their behalf, or they're simply feeling powerless, like there is not much that they can do even when they think that something is not right. And in general, many people, they keep complaining about the lack of significance in the work that they're doing. And so and we all know that happy, engaged employees, of course, they bring for higher productivity, higher profitability, and even higher, more innovation. But it's a whole process to get the companies to change from like a paradigm that belongs to the previous century to the paradigm that we know are possible today. And so that's why, I was mentioning about the second pillar of this day's talk, which is about reinventing organizations. And there are like countless books that have been picturing this cultural transition from the 1960s, from L'Entreprise Libérée, like the French book. And even though I think Reinventing Organization, it's summarizing it is more elegantly than any other book. And so there are these three trends. That is the whole transition towards self-management, that is very important. So we start getting companies that are really getting people to get so autonomous, that are companies with 10,000 employees that allow their employees to actually choose their salary. And that's interesting because you think, what does a person need in order to choose their salary? They need to know how much the company is making. They need to know how much everyone else in the company is making. And they need to know how much a person that is working in the same sector would be making in a different company. And so that's interesting because for many people, that would be unthinkable to say, yeah, you can definitely choose the salary as an employee. But in companies with more than 10,000 people, such as Morningstar, they notice that people, when they're given this kind of responsibility, they don't fuck up. They actually take a genuine decision in regards to what is fair, like in regards to the company, and trying not to take something that is abusive, because everybody would know that. And nobody wants to actually take this kind of responsibility of taking a decision that would sound like not fair, like for everybody else. And so, and also the part of hierarchy. We're going towards more holocratic organization, where the whole complexity for decision making is not raising to the top, but it's actually distributed across the company. And so, instead of power hierarchies, we start companies that start leveraging those natural hierarchies of people. The second part is the whole idea of wholeness. There are organizations that are really doing their best to get employees to bring their whole self at work, so that they just are not wearing a mask, but they are really who they are. And as the fantastic Ricardo Semler summarized it, people don't need just a paycheck to be gratified. And so there are companies that are really finding ways to make sure employees have a much more creative arrangement with the company in regards of time and way to work, etc., to make sure that they can really tap into their reservoir of talent. And the last part is related to evolutionary purpose. The evolutionary purpose is the whole concept that, as Larry Fink, I've been presenting it, companies not just here anymore to make a benefit for shareholders, but there must be a contribution to society. This is the CEO of BlackRock saying that. And so we see that in the new model of leadership, the role of the leader is not the one anymore of simply pointing a finger to the right direction, but it's actually the one of listening. Listening, of course, not only where the market and the customer wants to go, but also listening to the organization itself. And so it all drills down to this whole concept of distributed intelligence that is fundamental of the paradigm that we are living in our hyper interconnected society. And so, of course, we do see this kind of distributed intelligence through open innovations in many ways. So for example, like in our case, we are collaborating with many open innovation programs in which we facilitate the collaboration between corporates and startups. And we help a corporation like to host this kind of relationship and building partnership and creating proof of concepts and the piloting and receiving funding, etc. So that is like one approach. There is the whole like co-creation, for example, with clients. And like everybody knows example, like the one of Lego that was on the verge of bankruptcy. And then they suddenly managed to launch Lego Ideas and they started leveraging the ideas of hundreds of thousands of customers. And also like the fantastic presentation of HeroX, like it shows how many people are capable of contributing. And I want to emphasize that I think we are still lacking a little bit more of the listening internally, like if not from the classic employees, but to these people that could be change makers inside the company. So everybody knows the example of Google and people like Paul Buchheit that simply came up with the idea of Gmail when Gmail was not at all in the plans of Google, and suddenly it became one of the big cash cow of the company. But these are the known cases. I am more passionate about cases that many people don't know. For example, the case of Simon Barry. I do not know if you know what he did for Coca-Cola. He realized that Coca-Cola was sitting into the best logistic machine that was ever invented, because they can actually deliver Coca-Cola in the most remote places in Africa, where not even NGOs can actually get there to bring their medicine. And so he actually made a couple of collaboration with different government and NGOs to make sure that they could actually design like medicine that they could actually fit in the Coca-Cola boxes, so that they could actually leverage the Coca-Cola network in order to distribute medicine, where before they would never arrive. And then there are other examples such as Tamara DiCaprio, like which is working for Microsoft and creating fiscal accountability for the energy consumption of each business unit, or Media Sidiba that made out of Lifebuoy soap, like a business model for also reducing child mortality. And that's interesting because they all have been doing these projects with a lot of public-private partnerships and with collaborations that otherwise would have never allowed for these initiatives to take place. And so if you look at like how like society looks like, but really for us, like think about your kids, think about the people that are going to come after us. We suddenly are facing this kind of age of global challenges. And that's interesting because, okay, of course, we know global warming, and we know like the loss of biodiversity. We know how complicated it's going to be the fact of regulating AI, or, for example, like viruses that may outbreak in the next years. And I think that after what happened with COVID, we all realized that these global challenges are beyond what a single nation can do, or beyond what a single company can do, and they really require this kind of global collaboration that otherwise would nullify our effort to tackle those challenges. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of collective impact, where collective impact, it is a different approach than what the market says. Like as an investor, I would invest on the company that would actually have the best opportunity for scaling. But when you're talking about the global challenges, it's not about the one company. It's about all these different stakeholders in the public, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, individuals that suddenly start working in the same direction, because if there is not a governance that makes sure that everybody is rowing in the same direction, it would be the same of having a rowing boat in which everyone is moving at a different rhythm. So that boat doesn't move. And that's a little bit the kind of main challenge that we have today when we're tackling those global challenges. We're not there yet. Like you still see a lot of individual effort with everybody doing their best. And it's not about every organization doing their best. It's about much more diplomacy that like we've ever seen, if we really want to like come alive. So that's why like we look at like we always look for impact in all the programs that we run. We're not just looking for programs that are not like socially or ethically acceptable. We just look for companies that are really, really like working for having a positive social and environmental impact, and also like providing profitability perhaps. And so there are great examples of collective impact with organizations such as Mars that has been reforming cocoa farming in Ivory Coast. like organizing and contributing to organize the collaboration across hundreds of organizations, or HP, for example, that has been speeding up the diagnosis for treatment of young children with HIV in Kenya. And also, like, this collaboration have taken years in order to be achieved, because there have been people behind pushing for combining the three things, which is that create shared value, which is the business opportunity combined with the corporate asset and expertise, and the societal and environmental needs. And this is the kind of innovation that we want to see more and more, and that we hope to actually facilitate by bringing all these different stakeholders and helping clarifying how they can all play a role and create and capture value through the process. And so to conclude, I just leave you with this quote, which I think is perfect, which is saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth. These are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, and women's empowerment, because solutions to one problem must be solution for all. Thank you so much.
Hey, Emanuele, I gotta tell you, man, do you really believe we have a climate change problem, or we have a leadership problem?
It's I think that, like, the climate change is not a problem. Climate change is just a consequence of an economic model that it made a lot of sense when it started, and that's very difficult to just continue today, And so, like, that's why, like, climate change is not a problem. Climate change is our problem, but it's simply a consequence of our current economic paradigm.
Okay. Well, I think we're living in a world where you open the news today, right? And everything is negative. And so in order for us to change the environment that we're looking for to change, I think first we need to change the narrative.
Can I ask you one question? Why do you think there is so much focus on negativity from news outlets, for example? Why, like, do we respond as human, like, more violently if there is, like, a negative news?
Because it's just human. Like, they just respond to negativity. They pay more attention to negativity than they pay to positivity. But this it's all because of social programming that's been going on for decades, where pretty much, like, you open the news. I mean, back in the days, I remember at least was like 15-20% positive news. Now you rarely have a positive news.
Yeah, because everybody's fighting for attention, and because like, attention is what like, ultimately, like, drives the profit for the organization that are working in that sector. So that's why it's very tricky, like, to reinvent an economic model, because it's not going to be like just one organization being able to do that. That's one of those other global challenges we're facing right now, and that requires like more diplomacy that we have ever seen. That's why when I see, for example, conflicts happening right now, they're always failure of diplomacy, and that's when I get negative. That's when I say, shit, like, if we're not capable of, like, tackling such small problems, how are we going to be able to tackle the bigger global challenges?
Yeah, I truly believe that we're living in a world where today we have a weak people leading society, leading organizations, and they're bringing us to bad times. You mentioned about BlackRock CEO. I mean, he's looking to change people's behaviors by force. He's very clear. So why do we need to change people's behaviors by force?
Yeah. It's just always about these pockets of power that are capable of talking at this level. This is not something that we would ever be able to do, because we are not BlackRock, and we're not capable of mobilizing the GDP of the United States 3 times every week, because this is what we're talking about. And so, like, it's everything. It's all part of the economic model, and that's very tricky, because there are, like, very important forces that have no interest in changing that. But if you look at it, at the end of the day, we are still in 2024 with 8 people that have the wealth of 4 billion people. What is that? Like, is this success? Oh my God, this is terrible.
Yeah, and so that's the one reason why, and I want to open up Clive for some questions if we have for Emanuele. But to that point, Emanuele, why can't we approach first identifying the root cause of the problem first with the crowdsourcing focus, and then try to bring what the root cause of the problem is, bring it to solutions. What we're seeing here, for example, all across is that we're seeing the problems being identified and then just being presented, and then let the world solve the problems. What we really don't know is that the problem in the first place.
It's you know,
I mean, it's
that's
like a climate change, for example, same thing. Like we just bought this idea there's a climate change, but is there really a climate change? This is the real question we need to ask ourselves. Just because the clouds are appearing in middle of May and somewhere in Europe, that doesn't mean it's a climate change, right?
are you asking whether climate change is a hoax?
I'm not saying that climate change is a hoax, but what I'm saying is like we're buying this idea that the climate change exists. We are not even asked particular question why that exists, and if that exists, who's pushing it for us to believe that that exists. For example, Coca-Cola, you mentioned about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is talking about, I would say, most of the time talk about sustainability and climate change, but they're the number one polluter on this earth.
Yeah. So like it's but that's the thing, you know, like it's very difficult to take a huge company as it can be Coca-Cola and just like discard everything that these guys are doing. What I mean is that the example of this innovator, it is one person that cared about make that happen and managed to be a change maker inside that organization. And so like that's interesting because there was perhaps the cultural capacity for the organization to allow for someone like him to emerge. But then, you know, like the reason why Coca-Cola is still one of those polluters, it's still somehow linked to the old concept of the economic paradigm we are in, meaning would Coca-Cola perhaps go back completely into glasses, for example, instead of using plastic? That would be ideal. That is going to have a huge impact with logistics because you're not going to be able to transport even half of the amount of bottles that you bring from a place to another. So there are 1,000 economic reasons for which that would be punished by the market. And that is crazy because like that kind of punishment that will result in Coca-Cola losing profitability and then like losing shareholders that will believe that that's the best way to actually maximize their profit. So it's all connected. So that's why I don't think that Coca-Cola is bad or another company is bad. It's simply like the rules of the games are ruthless. And so like the people behind those, they simply need to like comply to those, and people like the guy that I was showing before is simply someone that managed to do something that is finding, you know, like this kind of compromise between it was a business opportunity and it's using the company asset and is also you know, tackling a social and environmental issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Clive, what's your question? Do you have any question for Emanuele?
I think, I mean, that few minutes of discussion between the pair of you just shows, you know, some of these issues seem to be so absolutely massive. It's like where to start and who's going to start, who's going to be the people who start taking the lead on this. So I guess the question is, because I've finally got one in Manuela, which is it's the idea of employees set their own job descriptions and how much they're going to pay themselves and whatever. I mean, what are the most common challenges that any company faces to start considering operating on a system that's a tool like this? What are the biggest reasons given to you as to why people aren't even going to think about it?
So like why would a company like start operating in that way? Is this your question?
Yes, yes.
I would say that it reflected a certain value, like which is the fact that if you would be working for me, for example, or with me, like, and I would say, I'll tell you, hey, Clive, you have a 3% increase this year, and you would find it unfair. You know, depending on your kind of organization, you would simply swallow the news and that's it. So, like, the point is that there are certain people that simply started believing, and so it always depends on the leadership, you know, because that's somehow reflects then like the culture across the organization. To say that, yeah, perhaps I can actually treat these people as adults and tell them like what is really the company making, and make sure that everybody like can see what everybody else is making, and get them to actually take a decision that makes sense based on what the market is doing. And you can be an adult and you can be a responsible individual like taking this decision. So it's simply about the mindset, and not every company of course shares this mindset. And in the book that I was recommending, it's interesting, they talked about a US company called AEM, which is like a utility company, 40,000 employees, like it's a big company. And they went from like a very enlightened management to a more traditional type of management, and they lost all these cash flow trades from a day to another. What I mean is that a company that has those values may lose them like the moment that the leadership changes. And so that's why it's all about of what the people at the top of the company like believe it's possible. And I think that's the first way to actually see those examples. I really recommend the book. You would be surprised by the amount of companies, big and small, that have been somehow showcasing the same values without even knowing each other.
Is it naturally easier for smaller companies to go down this route? Companies that don't have shareholders that need to agree these kind of things?
No, I would say that no, because a company like AEM with 40,000 people, like it's a company quoted in the stock market, and of course, you know, like there are shades of gray, like between like the most open companies to the one that are allowing like some levels of freedom to the employees. But no, it has nothing to do with for-profit, non-profit, and size of the company. Like it's more about like the management. So that's why I can send you like to send me an email, like a couple of references, and you would be surprised by the book. You know, it's pretty impressive. Like I've been
looking at this literature, and I find it fascinating.
It's great.
Okay, that's good.
Fantastic. It was great having you both, Carl and Emmanuel. We're running out of time here, so truly appreciate your time and the work that you're doing, and wish you all the great success. So hopefully we get to see each other again next time soon in such a conversation like this. Also, I'd like to thank all of you who are taking part of this crowd sessions. Join us next in July 24th at 5 p.m. Central European Time, where we'll be talking about unlocking the power of crowdsourced cybersecurity. So look out for events at crowdsourcingweek.com/events page. Also, if you're interested in joining Bold Awards 6th edition, just type yes on the chat. Obviously, we won't be able to chat because some issues in the background of the Zoom. So just let us know, send us an email, hello@crowdsourcingweek.com, and we'll be able to come back to you. Thank you again for joining us. Hope to see you all next time. Have a great evening, day, morning, and be blessed, be bold. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.